Hello and welcome to the Essential Property Podcast with your hosts, Paul Samuda and Amanda Woodward. With 45 years of combined experience in the world of property buying, selling, investing and developing, they are here to share with you their knowledge in the Stoke-on-Trent, Newcastle-under-Lyme and Crewe property market. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Essential Property Podcast with your host, me, Amanda Woodward. And today it's our third birthday, so I'm really excited to say happy birthday to the Essential Property Podcast. 3 years ago, this was our lockdown baby. We started February 2021, sitting at home, mid of lockdown, and we thought, right, let's start a podcast. And 40 episodes and 5,000 downloads later, here we are. So I wanted to take the opportunity on this episode just to give you a recap as to what's happened over the last 3 years on the podcast. So you can go back over future episodes, the ones that you think will be super useful or that you think would be something that you don't know and you want to learn about. And you can go through and pull out the right episode for you. So February 2021, we're in the middle of lockdown and there was 3 things apart from the podcast that were on our mind. Okay. First thing was we've got properties that we're currently developing. What's going to happen to those? We've got properties that are rented, our buy-to-let portfolio and our HMO portfolio. Are the tenants going to be able to pay the rents and what's going to happen to the tenants and are they okay and are they working? Have they lost their job? Are they with their family? What's the situation? And then the third thing was the management company. So we've got HMO management, we've got serviced accommodation management. What's happening there? Are we going to have any guests? What sort of guests are we going to have? Will we just have empty SA units for the next year or so? And what about HMOs? Will anyone want to live in a shared house again? Not being able to keep your 2-meter distance? And are you going to want to share a bathroom with somebody with this whole COVID pandemic taking place? So they were the 3 things on our mind. So when it comes to development, you'll cast your mind back, you'll remember, do you remember when we couldn't get hold of plaster? And we were running around the country trying to get building materials and the building material costs were shooting up. So that was a bit crazy. And we were mid-development on one project and negotiating the purchase of a second project at the same time. So I think COVID probably gave us a little bit of negotiating power, I would say. And then the project that we were on, our builders were generally quite good because they didn't change the cost of the refurbishment, even though the building costs were going up. We just needed to try to get that refurbishment done as quickly as possible. And as soon as the government said that house building and refurbishment work could continue, we were straight back on site and ready to get going. So the developments took care of themselves once we could actually start developing. And when people were working from home, the solicitors, they just kept doing their thing in terms of the legals of the deal that we were negotiating. So the development side was okay. The rentals, our first concern was for the tenants and then was also the rentals. Are we going to be able to get paid? Are we going to be able to pay the mortgages? Have our tenants lost their jobs? Are they going to be able to look after their children? There's so much going on. So we had to work around that a little bit. And we was quite flexible with a few of our tenants, which I think was only fair during the time, to ensure that they had a bit of flexibility, but equally we knew that we could meet our overheads. So we worked on the rentals and that was okay. Our biggest concern was stabilising the management company. So we specialise in SA and HMO. Transient tenants, we thought, what if they all leave tomorrow? Well, actually, where they're going to go, that's probably not going to happen. What if they all lose their job and they can't pay their rent? What does that mean? But our 2 kind of more practical concerns were, who will our SA tenants be, SA guests be? And will people still want to live in HMOs post-COVID? Answer to the second question is yes, they do. And the demand soared for rooms post-COVID. That was mainly because people were looking for low-cost accommodation. And then the government needed a lot of nursing and support in the NHS and the care sector. And the HMO market absolutely boomed and is still booming. And the demand is insatiable at the moment, which is great. And people are happy to share a house with other people. And I think COVID's kind of long gone for many. For SAs, we started to open up the doors for the emergency workers, the nursing staff, the ambulance staff, the key workers, anyone that needed to come to Stoke and come to Crewe, anything COVID related. We opened our doors and we welcomed them in. We gave some really low discounted rates. And that kept the SA properties full during that period. And then as soon as the hotels started to open up and everyone started to get back to work, we were back to normal. But it was a crazy period 3 years ago. There are still effects in the economy, as we know from COVID. We still got effects in the economy from Brexit, but that's a whole other podcast. But during that 3 years, we wanted to share our knowledge, our stories, our network, our friends with our listeners. And I'm just going to run through now very quickly the different types of people that we've had on the podcast, the different subjects and topics that we followed. So you can go back, find the one that you want to listen to and bring yourself up to speed. So we did our first intro podcast, which tells you all about Paul and I and where we were 3 years ago in February 2021. And then episode 2, we had 3 fabulous ladies come onto the podcast to talk about their property development from a female perspective. So we had Karishma Davdra, Mags Leskabrewski, and Alexandra Powell. So if you want to have a listen to them, check out episode 2. Then Paul did an episode on the top 20 mistakes that investors make when investing in property for the first time. So that is a fabulous episode, and make sure that you listen to that to make sure that you don't go down any of those bad roads that a lot of investors do. We then spoke to Avi from the property shop, and we spoke about lettings in a pandemic and how they, as a student-focused letting agent, managed to ride through that period. We were talking to them in the pandemic, and they were sharing with us how it's going and what they're doing to stabilize their business. We then spoke with Andrew McGarrigle. So Andrew founded and owned McGarrigle's letting agencies in Crewe, which were a fantastic agency. We used them for lots of purchases and sales. And he sold to Stevenson Brown. So we had Andrew come on. He has a wealth of knowledge in all things property, residential and commercial. So he's there in episode 5. Episode 6, we had Sue and Alex Jonas. They are from Finance for Property Developers. They are fabulous brokers based in Stoke-on-Trent. So if you're raising finance, then certainly have a look at episode 6. Episodes 7 and 8, I did a solo episodes on Article 4 and on HMO licensing. So anybody investing in Stoke and Crewe, for that matter, head over to episodes 7 and 8 and listen to my thoughts and guidance in and around Article 4 and HMO licensing. Then in episode 9, Paul and I did a talk on life after the pandemic. This was the latter part of 2021. And we just talked through how things are going post-pandemic, what the market is like, and the opportunities on the back of that as well. Episode 10, we had Shiv Harrier from Lifestyle Property People, a sourcing agent and a whole bunch of other property services that Shiv runs in Leeds. So have a little listen to that. And then we had Mags back on the podcast talking about property sourcing back end of 2021 and how she was still securing deals in a competitive market. Now, if you remember post-COVID, the property market got really quite confident, shall we say, and it was quite difficult to secure deals. So Mags was sharing with you how she still manages to secure deals. Then we had the lovely Kim Thurman. So Kim's based in Cheshire, and she came on to talk about her business. And we talked on that podcast about relocating. So I relocated from London many, many years ago to Stoke-on-Trent. Everyone thought I was crazy. Kim also relocated from the south of the country up to the north for the love of wanting to build a property business. So if you're thinking of relocating for the love of property, episode 12 is a great one. Episode 13, Paul and I decided to talk about what we call the winners and losers of Stoke-on-Trent and the different strategies and stakeholders who are taking advantage of the market and also those that are struggling during that time. We then had a fabulous special with Singapore-based Daniel Sim. Now, Daniel is an international investor. He's been investing in Crewe for a long, long time, but he has done a wonderful job of building a network and a group of other international investors based in Singapore who are investing in the UK. So anyone who is perhaps overseas, not just in Singapore, could be in Hong Kong, could be all over the world, That's a really good episode, episode 14, to talk about investing from a international investor's standpoint. Episode 15, we got really excited because Stoke-on-Trent got the funding, £56 million, as part of the government's Levelling Up programme. So we spoke about the opportunities on the back of that and Michael Gove and how he was navigating the whole kind of Levelling Up programme across many Midlands and Northern cities, of which Stoke-on-Trent was one of them. Episode 16, we talk commercial conversions with the wonderful Salik and Karishma, good friends of ours, fantastic investors. We've known them for a long, long time, probably about 10 years or more now. And they spoke about commercial conversions in Crewe and how they were buying commercial property and renovating them into flats. So that's a really, really good episode there. Episode 17, we had an interior designer, Jessica, on. Jessica is just such a wonderful human being and has a wealth of experience in interior design and does a lot of work all over the country, interior design for HMOs and for serviced accommodation. So you should certainly check out that episode. Episode 18 saw us into January 2022. And we did our kickoff. We do a kickoff episode every year, talking about our goals for the year, how we plan our business. So lots of lessons there for you. Then we had LMPG founder Nick Watchhorn on the podcast. That's episode 19. And we've been using LMPG for years, since they launched. And we think they're great. I often hear people say, oh, do you really get the good discounts? And is it any good? Is it worth the membership? We think it's well worth the membership. We're using Johnson's for paint, getting great pricing, Plum Centre for bathrooms. We're using Magnet for kitchens. And we've always managed to get some really good deals. I don't know a plumber that can get a boiler cheaper than us. I don't know a joiner that can get a kitchen cheaper than us. And when you're doing stuff in volume, it's great. So if you're not on LMPG, you should probably check that out. And from memory, Nick did give a special offer on membership if you mentioned the podcast. So you might want to check that out. Episode 20, we had the lovely Sam White from Move to Grow Limited on the podcast, talking all things social housing. Sam has a phenomenal passion for wanting to merge property with her social agenda and helping people who are leaving the criminal justice system, people that are in rehabilitation. And she's doing a really, really good job of that in Stoke-on-Trent. Episode 21 saw us with Mar Design, and Raquel from Mar Design came on to talk about interior designs for HMO. Raquel is all over Instagram at the moment. I love watching her videos, and she gives you all the things that you should not do when interior designing a property. So that's always pretty good. So episode 21 for Raquel. And then episode 22, this is for sure one of my favourites. I had my lovely, lovely friend Jasmine on the podcast, Jasmine Desange, and her business partner, Priya Kripalani. They are from the Hard Hat Developers, and they are just doing some really big deals all over the country. When we were talking to them, they were doing a 21 flat development in Staffordshire, which is obviously just down the road from Stoke-on-Trent. So we were really keen to hear about that. They've been doing deals all over the country, large conversions, and they're just absolutely smashing it. So that's a really, really good podcast for those that have maybe some ambitions to do bigger deals. Episode 23, so we're now in May 2022, and we were ranting. Paul and I were ranting about the government, no surprise there or no change there. We were having a bit of a rant about the PRS and just talking about our predictions for the market. So the last 3 years, we have seen lots of change in the market. So that's us just giving our listeners an update on that. Then we had one of our most downloaded episodes, which was with the team at Signature Finance, talking all things mortgages, bridging loans, equity release, and everything that you really need to know as a investor when it comes to raising finance. Brilliant episode. On to episode 25, we managed to speak with Homes Under the Hammer superstar Louise Allen. And Louise doesn't tend to get too much on social media or front of the camera, but she had her time with the team at Homes Under the Hammer and she did a fabulous job. We currently manage 2 brilliant HMOs in Stoke-on-Trent owned by Louise. which have appeared on Homes Under the Hammer. And we talked through that whole process, buying at auction, the properties on Homes Under the Hammer, they're bought at auction, the renovation process. So lots of hurdles to jump through for Louise on that episode, but a really, really good one to listen to. Episode 26, we spoke about the recession, opportunities and threats in the UK economy. So 2022, we're still unsure what's going to happen with the market. Are we going to continue with this confidence? Are we at some point going to hit a little bit of a decline, which we didn't really see? Hindsight is a great thing, and we really didn't see that decline. Interest rates were still incredibly low. We weren't in that period where interest rates were taking a huge increase. So we shared our update on the market. Episode 27, we got the wonderful Alexandra Powell onto the podcast. She is an architect. She has a development company and also a property investor based in Stoke-on-Trent. So brilliant podcast there for any of those of you that have ideas to do projects where you're working with an architect. And Alexandra on this podcast from memory, she shares about why you need an architect perhaps on a smaller deal, and also the desire and need for an architect, obviously, on a much larger renovation project. So we do a 2-part podcast with Alexandra. Okay, episode 29, we're almost on the final 10. So we did a podcast here on why you should be investing in Stoke-on-Trent and Crewe, because we were currently operating at 100% occupancy across close to 500 rooms in our HMO portfolio. Now, it's not 100% all the time, but we do generally operate in the mid-90s. And the HMO market was just absolutely booming post-COVID. And we shared the episode there in terms of why you should be investing in HMOs. Episode 30 saw us looking back at 2022, reflecting on the year and planning the 2023 year ahead. Episode 31, we took a deep dive on our plan for 2023 and shared with you the 10 areas that every property investor should include in their business plan. And that still applies today. We actually don't change our business plan that much year on year. Okay, we tweak it a little bit. So that podcast episode will still be relevant as much as it is today. Then 2023 saw us start Project 1B. Oh my goodness, it's been a crazy year at One Batterson. But we decided to blog our way through the project via the podcast. So there's multiple blogs all through 2023 going through how we found the building, then how we plan to develop the building, then when we were getting it ready to rent. So those blogs are peppered all the way through the 2023 episodes. We did an episode 33 on HMO council tax by the room and will it be gone for good? So HMO council tax by the room has been a little bit of a horror for many landlords. And March 2023, we were going into the consultation as to whether that was going to be removed for good. We didn't know, but the whole community got behind it. We all put forward our thoughts to the government on the way that the Valuation Office bans council tax and what we thought was going to happen at some of our predictions. Luckily, our predictions did come true, which we cover in a further episode. Episode 34, we had eco-expert David Hilton from the Home Building and Renovating Show on the podcast. He also contributes to the Home Building and Renovating magazine, and they were touring the country. So we had a great chat with David there, and we were talking about anything from insulation through to heat pumps, through to solar, through to anything that we can use from an eco perspective to reduce the running costs of our portfolios. That's a really good episode there. Again, more blogs throughout the year about One Batterson, the final design, preparing for the launch. We launched that in the summer of 2023. We did an episode also when we were open, which was really quite exciting. Then episode 39, we had the amazing Wendy Whittaker-Large on talking about all things HMO council tax by the room. So at this point, we had the news that the government had effectively supported the lobbying and supported the request to change legislation and to amend the law effectively around council tax. And never again, or is never too strong of a word, for the time being, we will not have the threat of the valuation agency valuing HMO rooms for council tax by the room. And now we just have one banding for the property. So that was great news. Wendy did a really good job campaigning with some other people as well to get the law changed, which is no small feat. And she did a great job. So she came on, she told us all about that. That's a really good episode to watch. And then episode 40, the current episode prior to this, where we reflected on 2023 and set our predictions for 2024. Now, we all know that Paul likes to look forward into the future. Many of his mentees call him Yoda, which I think is a very suitable nickname. But he does like to see into the future. So we reflected on 2023. We spoke about what we were going to do and what we think is going to happen in 2024. So in 20 minutes, that's me summing up the last 3 years of the Essential Property Podcast, the last 40 episodes. Today's episode 41. So pick out the ones that you think are relevant to you, go back over them, have a listen. But for this year, we really want to engage with our listeners. We've had 5,000 downloads all across the world. So we're really keen to hear from you. So one, if you want to appear on the podcast, if you have a story to share, if you've got some hacks, you've got some updates, you've got something that our listeners would benefit from, we'd love to get you on the podcast. If there's something that you specifically want us to cover, please let us know. We will endeavour to get more special guests on, more experts. We'll share with you and be as open, as transparent as we can in everything that we're doing. So if you're investing in property, I hope you find it useful. If you're investing in Stoke-on-Trent and Crewe, you will find it incredibly useful. We're also going to start to be updating on the Derby market, the Birmingham market, the Burton market, as we expand with Stay & Co., which is our recent venture, doing what we do in Stoke and Crewe, but starting to expand that across the Midlands. So lots and lots of good things to come. So I hope you enjoyed this whistle-stop tour, and I look forward to sharing on the next episode. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if so, please hit subscribe and share with those who you think would enjoy it too. To get in touch with Paul and Amanda directly, please visit their website www.essentialpropertyoptions.co.uk for more information. We look forward to sharing with you on the next episode.